All right, standing by for us, TRT World's Andy Rosjan in D.C., Mohammed Al-Qasim in occupied East Jerusalem, but first to Christina Pashchin in Doha. Hi there, Christina, a pleasant morning to you. So we saw a visibly angry Qatari Emir emphasizing his country's, quote, right to respond. Is it clearer now what that might mean?
No, it is not, and people can speculate what Qatar will actually do because their options are limited. In his speech yesterday, the Prime Minister said that it shouldn't just be Qatar retaliating, it should be the entire region. And that's because Qatar has limited options as to what it could really achieve as a small military power. Now, will the rest of the GCC join forces? Will they want to risk entering into a wider war with Israel? That remains to be seen. I have my doubts. But I think whatever happens, it is truly making the GCC countries question whether America can be trusted. This was a disastrous attack on all accounts. Israel failed in its goals to wipe out the top Hamas leadership in Doha. All it has done is really angered Qatar and the U.S. You know, if Israel had achieved its goals yesterday, then I think America would be singing a very different tune. Trump would probably be praising the attack and trying to take credit for it as well. But because it failed, now Trump has been greatly embarrassed, and he has to find a way to mollify and appease the Qataris and assure them that this will not happen again on their soil. Can he really do that? You know, America has tried to be the security guarantor for Qatar for many, many years, and for the GCC countries in general, and it has consistently failed in providing those security guarantees, such as with the Aramco bombings in 2019, the Abu Dhabi drone strikes in 2022, even the Iranian missile strikes in June. So what will the GCC do now? Can they still trust America? And what will Israel do next? As I said, they have failed in their goal to take out the Hamas leadership brass. Khalil al-Hayya is still alive. Will they try again in Qatar? That remains to be seen.
With the minimal options you say Qatar has, we heard the Emir calling for solidarity on the matter. So since then, we've seen Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, Turkey, just a few countries in the region decrying this as a violation of international law. How are Gulf states, Gulf states and regional blocs like the GCC you mentioned, repositioning themselves to counter this breach of Doha sovereignty?
Well, there does seem to be great solidarity now and great anger at Israel. So I think what will be interesting to see is how this changes normalization attempts between the GCC and Israel. Will the UAE now reverse course? It seems like any sort of normalization process that was trying to be achieved with Saudi Arabia and Israel is indefinitely put on hold. I think anger is growing in the region. I think most of the GCC countries will, at least in words, defend Qatar and stand up for Qatar. But what impact that will have, what practical steps will happen next? Will there be any sort of a face-saving retaliatory strike against Israel? And if so, will they coordinate that with the U.S. so it doesn't escalate into a wider conflict? That is what will be up for debate in the coming days.
Okay, Christina, thank you for now. Now let's go to TRT's Andy Rosjan in Washington, D.C. Andy, good evening to you. So President Trump says he's not thrilled, but the Vice President, J.D. Vance, says that there was a silver lining in this attack, adding that, quote, it looks like it probably eliminated a couple of very bad guys from Hamas. So, I mean, it's quite often never quite clear whether the White House is unified on any issue, but where does the U.S. truly stand on the Israeli strike on Doha?
Right, well, in a series of posts on social media, one of those posts that Trump made about 6 or 7 hours ago, he called this an unfortunate incident, but one that he thought could be a springboard to peace. So they're trying to put some positive spin on all of this. But what Trump posted earlier, you know, he really toned down the bombastic language. You ran that soundbite from earlier about the time he released his Trump posts on social media saying that he wasn't thrilled. He basically repeated a very dry statement that the White House had put out a few hours earlier, saying that unilaterally bombing inside a sovereign nation and a close ally to the U.S. is working very hard and very bravely taking risks with us to broker peace does not advance Israel's or America's goals. He added that eliminating Hamas was a worthy goal, but these were very tame statements. They're really trying to walk a line here, not really condemning this strike, but not condoning it either. And in fact, you saw Christina there mention that another post that Trump put out was that he said he was assuring the Qatari leadership that this would never happen again on their soil. But as Christine mentioned, how can he guarantee that when President or Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu unilaterally on his own did it on his own, and Trump made clear that we had nothing to do with this. I had nothing to do with this. So they're trying to sort of walk this fine line at the moment. You know, the U.S. military has a big presence in Qatar. President Trump was the first president ever to visit Qatar back in May, and the Qataris gifted him this huge airplane that is going to retrofit as a new Air Force One. So it's a tough line, and maybe later on in the hours ahead, we'll hear what Trump has to say more clearly about this strike.
Yeah, this is really confusing.